a trivet, a hot pad, you put your hot pan on it, or even a rug. This is how you would essentially do a rug. You would just have a much bigger platform for you would make a bigger frame to fit your entire rug, and then when you were done, this is what you would do afterwards to finish the edges of your rug. So you know how to do a rug. You just need a big frame and this technique on the edges of the rug. So this, for the trivet, I use the Q-snap frame. I wanted to show you it. And it sets up really quickly. These are plastic things that go on the edge of the frame. So for your trivet, you would remove your item from the frame. And then you would trim. So see how this is really bubbly? It's gonna curl on you. That's why we have the iron. We're gonna iron it as we do a whip stitch is what it's called. We're gonna whip stitch the edges. So before we can do that, we need to trim our fabric because we're going to roll the fabric and then we'll whip stitch around the edge. And in order to do that, we need a smaller piece of fabric. This is too large. So we're gonna go around and we're gonna trim it about 1 inch all the way around. And if you are worried about it fraying, because monk's cloth does fray, you can put a bead of glue on the inside of this to prevent it from fraying too much close to your project. And you would use that PVA neutral glue that is in the resources. So you would just glue it all the way around so then you wouldn't have it fray too much. Now I'm going to trim all the way around. Now once you have it trimmed, we're going to, you can actually already iron it at this point to kind of get it to set down a little bit more. And I have my iron at the hottest setting, 6. The wool is insulent, so you don't have to worry about it affecting the wool because you're going to set a hot pan on there. So. And we're going to iron a lot. Little bit better. And then after we get it to set down a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and roll. So you're gonna go about halfway in because you want your frayed stuff to be tucked in so it doesn't fray more and it doesn't get stuck in your stitches. So you will do it halfway, and then you're gonna roll it even more. So it's a roll. And then I like these little clippy things to hold it as you go, because you're going to be using a needle and hand stitching this, so you're gonna be moving a lot. Your stitching will kind of help bring it together. So for your corners, you're going to want to cut some of your corners off to make it less bulky, similar to when you sew a corner of a piece of clothing. right, the key to the trivet and aerobic is iron, 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 iron. If it's ever looking wonky or you're getting frustrated, iron. I cannot emphasize enough how much ironing helps make this look a lot nicer. So, how do you do a whip stitch? You're going to use an upholstery or a darning needle as a thicker needle with a wider hole. You're going to thread the needle, squeeze it with your fingers is my tip, and try to push it through just so you can get enough, and then you can pull it through. Double up your yarn, pull it all the way through so there is an equal amount on both sides, and then you do not tie it at the end. We're going to hide it within our stitch. So I already started here. And you're going to insert your needle into the back of the piece, and you're going to want to put your needle as close to your loops as you possibly can. So insert your needle close to your loops on the front side, but move your loops over so you don't get them with your needle. Pull it through, but not all the way through. You're going to put these yarn tails to the side of the piece, and we're going to stitch those in, and that's how you're going to tie the knot. So I like to put those aside with the clip to hold them there, and then to do the whip stitch you just insert your needle on the back side again. So you just go back, pull it through, and go into the back. So you're just wrapping it with arm essentially. So insert your needle close to your loops, don't get the front, pull it all the way through, and kind of guide your yarn so it looks nice. And you're going to want to put these pretty close together even though you have the double strands. If you don't put them close together, then you will see some of the fabric in between, and you can go back and fix some of that. But to prevent that, it's best just to do it pretty much right next to each other as you work. Go through, insert in the back, pull through the front. And if it doesn't come through, a lot of times that means you have yarn trapped in there, or you got one of your loops. And then guide it with your fingers where you want it to go. And how tight is kind of your personal preference. That's kind of, you're gonna wanna play with that part of it. And then if it's getting a little bit wonky, so I'm gonna iron it. 6th setting of the yarn or the iron. Insert in the back, go to the front, guide it with your fingers. It's actually pretty fun. Not being a whip stitching. You can also do this if you're making a pillow. You can sew your pillow sides together with a whip stitch. So you can kind of see that it's still curling, and you can kind of see that it's uneven. I don't mind a little unevenness, but that's where the iron comes in. If you iron your piece as you work, then you will get it to lay flatter and it won't be as lumpy. If you don't iron, I find it wrinkles a lot and it's lumpy and it doesn't look straight and pretty. So that's where the iron comes in. Iron, iron, iron. As you're working, if you have a frayed piece, so the fraying, your whip stitch will hold the fraying of the material. Your monk's cloth isn't going to fray once you have whip stitched the edges. So if you have some fraying like this, you can close it in with your yarn and it will be okay. It's more so personal preference and whether you want those little frays to show. You can poke them in with your finger or cut them. Just like that. So see how it's a little bit lumpy here? This, if I were to do again, I would ensure so this stitch right here was just not as tight as the ones around it. So you want to work as you go. You want to make sure your stitching matches the ones next to it. So however tight you're making it, it should be how you tight you make it all the way around. to prevent the lumpiness. And to be honest, I get lumps every single time. And I believe if you were to make a rug with the rug warp, it might be a little bit easier to make this a little bit even. The monk's cloth is pretty pliable. There we go. And then when you get to the end of your yarn strand, you will double back your needle into your stitching to tie the knot. So you put your needle in what you've already worked, poke it out, and pull it through. And then you will trim it inside there. Just like that. And that one looks a lot nicer than this one.